For years, I used to drive by the sign for a local chiropractor on the way to work. It said, "I move the bones, and God does the healing." And the sign always made me wonder, what does God have to do with chiropractors? Well, I looked into it, and I found that the sign has a lot to do with chiropractic, actually. It was founded as a religion, after all. A religion based on magical, holy spine energy, and a religion that's main tenets apparently came from a ghost. And after hearing that, you might wonder, is chiropractic effective? And the answer is largely no. And is it safe? The answer is also largely no. But is it an unscientific cult? Yes. So let's dive into the crazy world of chiropractic. What they believe in, how do they come about, why they're still allowed to practice, if they work, and why you should really, really avoid seeing one. Let's dive in. Chiropractic starts with one man. This man, D.D. Palmer.
And yes, that's what he looked like. Maybe a bit more, rustic than you would have guessed.
This man eventually had 6 wives, so he had some sort of riz going on. D.D., short for Daniel David, was a magnetic healer operating out of Davenport, Iowa in the late 1800s. What is a magnetic healer, you ask?
Well, it's not someone hawking those dumb bracelets that were around in the early 2000s, and it actually doesn't have a lot to do with magnets past its inception. Essentially, it was this idea that there was a magnetic, vital fluid flowing in your body that occasionally got blocked, causing illness. It was then the job of the magnetic healer to unblock these blockages. Originally with magnets, but eventually with his hands, in a kind of massage.
As unrelated as this may seem to chiropractic, I want you to keep in mind as we go forward. So it was while working as a magnetic healer,
Something he was repeatedly sued by actual doctors over, which will become a theme for chiropractic going forward.
that he was having a conversation with his deaf janitor, Harvey Lillard. Very loudly, I presume. After a particularly funny joke, Dee Dee slaps Harvey Lillard on the back, miraculously improving his hearing.
Days later, Dee Dee examined the man's back and noticed a vertebra protruding, which he promptly pushed back into place. Ouch. And suddenly, the deaf janitor was now a hearing janitor. And so chiropractic was born.
Except that this story changed a lot in the history of chiropractic. Originally, it was a light slap that Dee Dee gave to the janitor on his back, and then it became Dee Dee slapping him on the back with a heavy book he had in his hand, which sounds less like a friendly gesture and more like straight up assault. And then Dee Dee changed it to this whole elaborate story of how him and Harvey Lillard had many conversations and many examinations, and this is what led to him fixing the janitor's hearing. In any case, this story is a bit hard to believe. Sure, injury to the spine can affect your hearing, but only in the cervical or neck area. And according to both Dee Dee and the janitor, the slap on the back was in the lower back. It was this incident that instilled in Palmer that all ailments can be cured through moving the spine, eventually saying that
A subluxated vertebra is the cause of 95% of all diseases. And if you were wondering what the other 5% of diseases are caused by, it's apparently other displaced joints. And also, this 5% is seemingly made up entirely of corns and bunions.
Palmer would christen himself doctor without the authority of any medical body, and would make it his life's mission to spread chiropractic as far and wide as he could. Now, Dee Dee would not take all the credit for the founding of chiropractic. Later in his life, he attributed a lot of the knowledge of it to a Dr. Jim Atkinson, a prominent physician in Davenport, Iowa. A prominent physician who died 50 years before apparently delivering this message to Dee Dee.
The ghost doctor is in.
And yes, that means that chiropractors, whose whole thing is bones, apparently got their entire practice from a ghost, who generally don't have bones as far as I'm aware. Dee Dee had apparently received this message during a seance at the Missouri prayer meeting, something he attended pretty often. You see, Didi was an adherent to Spiritism, which is a belief system that I don't really have the time to get into and would make up its own whole video. It involves Christianity, spirit evolution, UFOs, utopian socialism, and Brazil. The thing about this ghost story is that, like chiropractic's other origin, it changed over time, with Didi originally saying the message was delivered to himself, and then later in life saying that it came to his fourth wife during a 14-hour morphine-induced nap. What these origin stories leave us with, though, is a question. Where did the idea of chiropractic actually come from? Well, as we'll discuss more in the belief part of the video, a lot of chiropractic's core ideas come from the magnetic healing that Didi was doing before, especially ideas surrounding massage and blockages. A lot of chiropractic also seems to come from osteopaths, who were another alternative medicine provider operating around the same time as chiropractic, and from whom Didi apparently learned a lot of his techniques. Now, ghostly origins were not chiropractic's only spiritual connection. You see, Palmer originally founded chiropractic to be a religion in and of itself, a religion that comes about from the apparent metaphysical truths exposed by ailments being healed through the spine. Positioning himself next to Jesus, Mohammed, and Martin Luther as the founder of a new sect, albeit one based in Christianity. He saw readjusting bones as a religious practice, and one that fulfilled an obligation to both God and mankind. Later in life, he did take care to clarify that chiropractic was not a religious belief in and of itself, and more of a religious duty. Something he did to apparently allow chiropractors to practice whatever religion they wanted to. And because, in his own words,
all methods of treating diseases, as well as all forms of religion, are based upon superstition. Chiropractic as a science, as an art, and the philosophy thereof, also the moral and religious duty of chiropractors, are free of superstition. They are based upon the knowledge of principles and facts.
Asides from the ghost part, I presume. Religious considerations aside, chiropractic began to spread across the United States, as the Palmer family, namely Didi, his son BJ, and BJ's wife Mabel, opened up a school in 1897. From here, chiropractic exploded, with graduates of the Palmer School going to other states to start their own schools. Within the first 50 years of chiropractic, there were over 100 schools opened. Chiropractic was part of a wave of alternative medicine that was making its way into the hearts of the American public, largely due to a growing uncertainty with mainstream American medicine. To quote Kapchuk and Eisenberg's comprehensive articles on chiropractic,
Americans had been prepared to look for cases that on one hand pointed towards the limitations of mainstream medicine, and on the other made the miraculous seem possible.
Now, Didi's son, BJ, short for Bartlett Joshua, is just as important to the story of chiropractic as his father. Whereas Didi originally formulated the ideas, BJ marketed them. He wrote books, he started a radio station, and he even sold these branded cigars with this picture of him. Very modest. Now, BJ's antics could account for their whole own video, but just to touch on some of the highlights.
For one, BJ went all in on the religious angle of chiropractic, stating that it came directly from God, creating his own calendar that started with chiropractic's founding, and comparing himself frequently to Jesus, even going as far to call one of his dissenters the Antichrist of chiropractic, making it clear that he saw himself as chiropractic's Christ. He opened up his mansion's gardens to the public, gardens that were full of exotic plants, religious idols, and live alligators. He also heavily marketed, and later leased out to students in a predatory leasing scheme, the neurocalorimeter, a device supposedly able to determine the origins of all ailments, which it did by measuring body heat. Okay.
BJ also had a long-standing feud with his father. A feud that culminated in him running over his father with a car during a parade. And his father died. Apparently of typhoid fever like a month later, but still. And possibly worst of all, BJ gave Ronald Reagan his very first job in the entertainment industry, working for the World of Chiropractic radio station, which may just make chiropractic responsible for the AIDS pandemic. BJ was really just a strange and bad dude all around. And all of this is not to mention the very, very strong anti-vaccine sentiment that is held by chiropractors, from Didi to today, to the intense racism of chiropractic's founders, which is exemplified in their connections to the KKK and to the modern Tea Party movement. We could go on for hours about all the times that chiropractors set themselves on the wrong side of history, but alas. So I think the normal response to hearing that origin story is to wonder, what do these guys actually believe in? And what about chiropractic constitutes calling it a religion? Well, as we touched on, the original idea behind chiropractic was that all illnesses can be healed through the spine. The reasoning given by Didi in his works The Chiropractor and the Chiropractor's Adjuster for the importance of the spine was that it was the main conduit of innate intelligence.
Innate intelligence being a vital energy that is responsible for the maintenance of the body. Vital energy that can have its flow interrupted by dislocated vertebra, called subluxations, which leads to ailment.
And as such, the mechanism of action for chiropractic is fixing these dislocated joints to restore the flow of innate intelligence through the body. This kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? So how Didi actually describes innate intelligence is as being a universal, immortal force. One that he sees as being the same as what Christians call God. And so this Deus Spinae is the basis of why Didi and BJ called chiropractic a spiritual practice, which, it should be noted, they saw as being above all other spiritual practices. Because they reasoned that innate intelligence can be proven to exist, unlike all other belief systems. Because chiropractic can heal all ailments according to them. And so, this is the core reasoning given behind why chiropractic is effective. And this is its core mechanism of action, releasing the God energy in your spine. Now, not all chiropractors actually believe in this idea of innate intelligence. There's actually a pretty big schism in chiropractic between straights and mixers. And this schism actually becomes super apparent if you read any chiropractic journals, which I had to read a lot for this video. And yes, chiropractors who believe in spine God energy have their own academic journals that are peer-reviewed. Crazy world we live in. And so, straights, a term originally coined by BJ because they follow the straight path set out by him and Didi, are the ones who buy completely into this idea of innate intelligence, and have the idea that all ailments can only really be healed through spinal manipulation. Now, among chiropractors, just like among the fan base for musical theater, straights are the minority. The much larger group of chiropractors are the mixers. Originally called chiropractoids by BJ, make of that what you will, the mixers are those who mix in other techniques, and tend to have a much more limited view of what chiropractic can actually do, usually prescribing to a view that it can be helpful in treating spinal and movement issues, and not that it can treat every ailment under the sun. Well, with the exception of bunions, that is. So mixers are the much more common type of chiropractor. And they're the ones who are much more likely to try and situate themselves in the mainstream medical establishment. Which, in my opinion, makes them slightly more dangerous than straights. Because at least straights wear their hearts on their sleeve and tell you all the crazy stuff first. Whereas with a mixer, despite their practice essentially being based on the same mechanism of action, don't actually hold any belief in that mechanism of action, and try to present themselves as some kind of actual medical authority. And so no matter what side of the schism a chiropractor relies on, their entire practice still relies on this idea of spinal manipulation. Now, the actual techniques chiropractors use to do this spinal manipulation vary pretty wildly across the field, but the two staples are the long lever and the short lever. The short lever is adjusting a spine through direct manipulation, usually with the short, quick jabs at someone's back. Whereas the long lever is spinal manipulation through moving a limb. Beyond these two core techniques, what chiropractors actually do can vary wildly, between a soft massage or using all kinds of wacky gadgets. With mixers, you're much more likely to get those wacky gadgets, whereas with straights, you're much more likely to stick to straight, direct spinal manipulation. And so now you might be saying, well, sure, it's a bit strange they believe that God lives in the spine. Surely he's a bit cramped in there. And sure, their origin story is a bit funky, but they must still be effective, right? They're everywhere, right? They must do something, right? Well... And so, time for the million-dollar question. Are chiropractors effective? Well, not very. So it's actually pretty difficult to find good research on the efficacy of chiropractic. This is because most of the research done on chiropractors is done by chiropractors, which might lead to just a bit of bias in the results. So let's get the big one out of the way first. Non-spine related ailments have little to do with the spine. And no matter which way you move your back, or how much you believe in innate intelligence, spinal manipulation will not cure asthma, cancer, or whatever else chiropractors claim it will. But what about back pain? You know what people actually go to chiropractors for?
In a systematic review widely cited by chiropractors in JAMA from 2017, spinal manipulation was found to lead to, quote, modest improvements in treating acute back pain.
Which seems sort of positive, especially when you forget that acute back pain usually goes away on its own. However, when you look a lot closer at these results, you realize how lackluster they really are.
First, there is little consistency between the studies used, in all areas from patient selection to the results of the studies themselves, making any definite conclusions dubious. None of the studies compared spinal manipulation to placebo effects, which seems like a massive blind spot. Most of the studies were deemed low quality by those putting together the review. Oh, and most significantly, some 50 to 67% of participants in these studies reported mild adverse effects, like increased pain, stiffness, or headaches. So you essentially have a 50-50 chance of ending off worse than you began, all for some, quote, modest improvement. So that's acute pain, but what about chronic? Chronic back pain is something that plagues a lot of people.
Oh, my back.
And something that doesn't have any good treatment. How does chiropractic fare? Well, a 2019 Cochrane review found that it generally performs the same as other, not very good treatments, which is something in its favor, I guess. Except when you realize that only 10% of these studies compared to placebo effects, which honestly kind of explains all of the treatments that had a positive effect.
And this is echoed in other systematic reviews, which generally find that chiropractic is as effective as other treatments for chronic back pain, which are all about as effective as a placebo. Of course, this only applies to studies that actually compare chiropractic to a placebo, of which there are very, very few.
And there is also no good evidence that chiropractic is good at treating neck pain, another common malady people go to chiropractors for. A 2015 Cochrane review found some slight evidence that chiropractors may relieve neck pain in the immediate, short term, but nowhere near enough quality evidence to make any kind of recommendation. This goes too for radiculopathy, or pinched nerves, another very common ailment brought to chiropractors. Although there actually is some moderate quality evidence that chiropractic is effective for treating lumbar radiculopathy, or at least as effective as acupuncture. Watch my video on The Body Keeps the Score for more on that. There is really no other quality evidence for its effectiveness on any other kind of pinched nerve or nerve-related issue. Something even noted in this systematic review done by a group of chiropractors.
I want to add that these studies were not cherry-picked to disprove chiropractic. These are fairly comprehensive studies, really the best of the best when looking at this subject, the cream of the toe corn, if you will. If I wanted to find studies that were of much lower quality to disprove chiropractic, I could find loads of them. So, chiropractic, far from the miracle cure extolled by its founders and proponents, largely seems to be operating on a placebo effect. But of course, the placebo effect is not nothing. And as long as it's helping people and not causing any harm, then there's nothing wrong with it. And chiropractic isn't causing harm, right? It's not killing people, is it? So chiropractic actually is hurting people. A meta-analysis from the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine found that 30 to 60% of chiropractic patients suffer from some sort of adverse effect after going to one. These are mostly things like headaches, soreness, and fatigue, none of which are that serious. However, it's when you look at the major adverse effects that chiropractors become kind of scary.
Spinal manipulation has been found to be a risk factor for vertebral and cervical artery dissections, both of which disrupt blood flow to the brain and can cause stroke. Prevalence data on artery dissections caused by chiropractors is hard to find, likely the result of underreporting. But among a population of 310 patients suffering from vertebral artery dissection at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, 34 of the cases were found to be the result of chiropractic manipulation. A report from the Journal of the Canadian Medical Association found that 1 in 5,000 to 1 in 10,000 strokes are the result of chiropractic care, with around 100 strokes due to chiropractic care occurring every year, which the authors consider an underestimate, given the general lack of reporting. A further literature review found 322 cases of artery dissections occurring as a result of chiropractic care in the period of 2001 to 2011. And this is only what is recorded in the literature, so just the tip of the iceberg. There are case study after case study of people having strokes following chiropractic care, and there have been multiple high-profile news stories of this happening as well. And it doesn't stop at stroke either. Sometimes chiropractors will just straight up kill you. A systematic review from 2010 found 26 reported fatalities from chiropractic care, and those are just the ones mentioned in medical literature.
And all of this is done by licensed chiropractors for little to no benefit. People are putting their lives on the line when they go to see a chiropractor for no good reason. And then there's the harm that chiropractors pose to children who cannot give informed consent and who chiropractors have seriously injured in the past. And of course, as with most alternative medicines, there is chiropractors' disdain for proven medicine, like chemotherapy or vaccines, which chiropractors advising against proven treatments has resulted in the deaths of their patients, who take their word as law. And of course they do. That dubious doctor they put in front of their name gives them all the credibility in the world and lets them continue to spread their cancerous ideology.
So, at this point, you're probably wondering why chiropractors are still allowed to go around calling themselves doctors when they have all this nonsense following them around. Well, for a long while, they weren't. Chiropractors, for the first few decades of their existence, pretty regularly were thrown in jail for practicing medicine without a license. It was only after many lawsuits and political campaigning that they were allowed to practice unhindered. Well, mostly unhindered. You see, having people who believe in wild shit going around calling themselves doctors and claiming to heal people does not sit well with actual doctors. This is why the American Medical Association labeled chiropractic as an unscientific cult in the 60s and forbade their members from professionally associating with anyone who practiced chiropractic. This injunction against its members led to the 1988 case Wilk v. AMA, in which a collection of chiropractors sued the AMA, seeing their denouncement as a restraint of trade, meaning an action that interferes with free and fair competition in the market, essentially accusing the AMA of holding a monopoly on practicing medicine. The Seventh Circuit Court agreed with chiropractors on this matter, saying that there was not clear evidence that chiropractors were quacks. This has put the AMA in a tight position, as they are now at risk of violating these antitrust statutes if they decide to criticize chiropractic practices. This has allowed chiropractors to thrive in America, as they don't have to worry about the things they recommend being reprimanded by actual medical bodies.
So at this point, you're probably wondering, why do people still go to chiropractors? They don't really do anything, and at worst, they can kill you. And why is there such a demand for chiropractors, with them popping up all over the place? Well, I feel a large part of it is that case I mentioned earlier. That case makes it very hard for actual medical professionals to criticize chiropractors for fear of legal retribution. I also think a big part is misinformation. A lot of people don't know that chiropractors are dangerous.
I mean, whenever you look up chiropractors on YouTube or TikTok, you get a lot of these oddly sexual ASMR videos that make incredible claims.
And they seem to have a lot of institutional recognition.
For example, you can find them recommended by a lot of seemingly reputable sources, like Harvard Health or Duke Health.
I think cost plays a large part too. Seeing a chiropractor on average is about $60, whereas seeing an actual doctor is about 5 times that on average. And this disparity grows even larger as you get into specializations dealing explicitly with back pain. And sadly, in a country without universal healthcare, The cheaper option is often the only option. Another reason that people go to chiropractors is how they make them feel. So much of modern medicine is essentially prescribing people pills and sending them out of the door. Chiropractors, by the nature of their very profession, put their hands on you. They touch you. They make you feel things. The manipulations that they do, while pretty much all bogus, are a physical intervention. They make you feel like something is being done. I think it's very important not to discount the effect touch can have on the healing process. Chiropractors also don't usually run a whole lot of tests, and can pretty much instantly diagnose you with one of their nonsense names, which again makes it feel like you're actually being cared for, as opposed to sending some pee off to your doctor and waiting a month to get the results back. And lastly, if someone is mistrustful of our medical system, which I think there's a lot of good reason to be, a chiropractor is just another form of alternative medicine. It's just one step up from drinking moon juice or rubbing on some essential oils. And so, that's chiropractic. Please do not go to a chiropractor. There is very little benefit in actually going to see one, and they can kill you. Hopefully, this video explains well enough why you should avoid them like the plague, and how their beliefs constitute an unscientific cult, like the AMA claimed all those years ago.
Thank you for watching this video. This took me about 3 years in total to make, with a lot of breaks in that period, and it feels so satisfying to just be done with it. I want to give a special shout out to my friend Josh, who provided all of the music for this video, and was a major cheerleader along this very, very long process. Thank you for watching.